Look, I am here to win. I made the jump from Goldwater Institute because we have an amazing opportunity with the results of the last election. This is an opportunity we have to seize, and I cannot look at my 10-year-old and my 8-year-old unless we seize it, and we need to seize it now. We need to seize it quickly. And this is what the difference is also about the compact. It not only settles these questions of uncertainty that have driven other efforts off the rails, it cuts the time. Take a look at this PowerPoint presentation, this slide. The compact approach consolidates the Article 5 process so that you save huge amounts of time potentially. And we'll talk about this in greater detail as I go through. But if you want an amendment as soon as next year, there's only one way to do it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't support any other effort. You should. Anyone who has a portfolio of investments should never put all their eggs in one basket. But if you want an amendment next year, and if you want to fix the debt, which is the low-hanging fruit of all the problems we have, this is the most powerful vehicle out there. And by the way, the vehicle is ALEC approved as of a couple of years ago. Now, we've heard that there's not, a balanced budget amendment is just not good enough. It just doesn't do everything under the sun. Now, first of all, as a legislator, those of you who are legislators, how wise is it to try to fix everything at once? Is that usually a strategy for success? But aside from that, I challenge the idea that a balanced budget amendment is not a fundamental reform that strikes at the root cause of unlimited federal government, because Thomas Jefferson anticipated that it would be only 8 years after the program began. In this quote, he said, if there's one amendment that would restore the first principles of the Constitution, the founding principles of the Constitution, it would be taking away the power of borrowing from the federal government. Now, why did he say that? Well, it's obvious if you look back in time that the government has grown, but why? Because when you can shift the bill to non-voting future generations, there is no effective political check. You can have all the parchment barriers you want, but if you're up against a legislator that is promising everyone what they want to hear at no immediate cost, over the long run, you're going to lose, and the government is going to grow. It's that simple. There has to be a limit on debt as a necessary, but admittedly not sufficient remedy to get back to the original meaning of the Constitution. Thomas Jefferson saw it. 49 states see it. It's time that the federal government see it and not treat this like a green eye shade issue. But by the way, it is actually an emergency. This is not something that we can take lightly. We have a debt that is out of control. And if you look at this chart, folks say, oh, it's nominal, it doesn't count, but it shows a system problem. Anytime you see a chart like that in engineering or physics, you've got an exponential problem, something that's not self-contained, self-controllable. This points to the fact that Thomas Jefferson was right. Even if you look at this in terms of, the real economic impact, look at how the debt is as a percentage of the economy. We are where Greece was when everyone panicked in 2007. Take a look at it. This is not a time to go, hey, we got all the time in the world. We have little time. And don't buy the hype. We are not only past $18 trillion in debt, we're not getting any better. If we're running $500 billion deficits when we're already $18 trillion in debt, that is insane. We can't be behaving like this. This is going to be destructive of all of our future and our kids. So, do you want to get this done soon? I hope so, because you know what? In 5 to 10 years, it won't matter. It'll be too late. See, this is the thing. We can't wait for a process, no matter how many different other reform ideas it may have. We cannot wait to fix the debt for 5 to 10 years. It will be irrelevant in 5 to 10 years. We will be forced to default one way or the other. So if we want to fix the debt, we need to do it soon. And if you want to do it soon, we have to use a compact. Now, what is it that we're going to have in the compact? Now, Senator Olafson is going to talk about the key component, which is state approval of any further debt limit increases. Dr. Schlomock, is going to talk about the effect that they will have on prioritization. But here are the basic components, a quick overview. First, define the balance in terms of a spending limit. You limit spending to cash flow, with exception of borrowing from a specific line of credit. That line of credit starts out with a 1 to 2 year cushion of additional borrowing capacity to allow for a transition. If you need more borrowing capacity, you don't let the addict pump himself up with more heroin. You bring in outside intervention. The states have to approve it. You put a mechanism in place so that we don't have games of chicken anymore. It's not hard. You just require the president to start making impoundments long before hitting the debt limit. So you have an actual debate over the priorities that he's setting. Then you want to look at the tax side. You don't want to be so crazy tax limited that you actually can't get to 38 states. There's no point in doing an amendment you can't get to 38 states with. So you don't want to go completely Tabor on the tax side. But you do want to protect the seed corn of future growth. So what you do is you have a general rule of 2/3 across the board, but you create exceptions. You reserve the simple majority rule to switch to a consumption tax, what some people call sales tax, an end-user sales tax, not a VAT. You create exceptions for simple majority through closing loopholes, flattening the taxes. You can raise more revenue with simple majorities, as is the current rule, if you're flattening the code, and then you just leave tariffs and fees alone. The special interests protecting those areas are going to be able to defend themselves. And besides, if you had to choose between an increased income tax or a tariff, it's probably better to do the tariff or less bad, only because we're not destroying our capital and undermining our competitiveness in other places. So that's the amendment. Here is the amendment process without the compact, okay? At least 6 stages, over 100 pieces of, the simplest form, at least 100 pieces of legislation. It could literally be a 200-year process. The last amendment to be ratified took 227 years. Okay? And that was from a congressionally proposed process. We have no idea how long this will take. The compact approach structure is completely different. It literally is simply 3 stages. It is a grand total of 39 legislative enactments. It can cut the time down to 1 year. It can reduce the number of legislative moving parts by 60%. How does it work? Well, first, you have a state compact, which is just a fancy word, not for a makeup kit, but for an agreement among the states. States have 200 of these in place. The average state is a party to 23 or more, and they do a lot of weirder things than amendments. There's a military alliance compact out east against the Soviet invasion, still in place. All right? There's a lot of things that compacts do. This is not unusual. So you put in this agreement, passed as an ordinary bill, every stage that the states control in the Article 5 process. In the congressional resolution, you put in every stage that the Congress has a point of control in the Article 5 process. What does that mean? In the compact, you have the proposed amendment identified, fleshed out in full, and in your packet you can see it, read it, test it. In the compact, you have a commission that is organized. It exists today with Paulette Braddock, Representative Braddock, and Lieutenant Governor Meade Treadwell of Alaska. An actual interstate body exists right now, a government body serving as a platform to advance the ball and handle logistics. There's an application to Congress required by Article 5 in the compact. When that application goes live, when 38 states join the compact, it triggers Congress's call that's already in the resolution. When the call goes live, it triggers the delegate appointments, which are already specified to be the governor by default, and you can modify that to suit your own state to a certain extent. It already specifies the convention rules. They're in the compact. It already specifies that the limitation of the debate is to voting up or down this amendment. And then if the amendment is approved at the convention, which, by the way, by the rules is limited to 24 hours in a committee of the whole, simple, quick, and fast, then it automatically triggers in a congressional resolution the pre-selection of legislative ratification. And when that goes live, in the compact is already an agreement among 38 states to ratify that amendment, and it goes live. Bang. That's the compact approach. This is Article 5 2.0. This is learning from the failures of the past and not repeating them. So you're probably going to say, well, is this constitutional? Let's dispel the biggest myth, unfortunately, our own side is perpetuating. The convention is an instrumentality of the states. It is not an autonomous deliberative body. It is clearly that, and I will show you the evidence, just the tip of the iceberg of the evidence, with all due respect to my mentor, in a lot of ways, Rob Nadelson. Number one, look at the original language of Article 5. Originally, Congress would be proposing the amendments on the application of the states. They swapped out Congress for a convention, but they left the other elements of the process in place. Now, what does that mean? In the original draft, obviously the application was the source of the amendments. The states weren't applying to Congress so that Congress could then craft amendments for them. The drafting history shows that the application in Article 5 is where you put your amendments. The convention was adopted in lieu of Congress, not to create an uncontrollable body that stands between the states and their desired amendments, but to simply because of technological reasons. They couldn't otherwise control the process without emails and telegraphs or telephones. Congress, just like the convention, does the bidding of the states. The bidding of the states is specified in the application. If you don't believe me, how else could what James Madison say be true in Federalist 43? He says that Article 5 gives states an equal ability with the general government to propose amendments. How could that be true if the convention was an autonomous, independently deliberative body that could ignore the states and what they wanted? It wouldn't be true. How could it be true when the Virginia resolutions were being discussed that James Madison emphasized that, you could get rid of the Alien Sedition Acts if you called a convention for the object of explaining that the Alien Sedition Acts were unconstitutional? It couldn't be true if the convention was an autonomous body that had to range apart from what the states wanted. Finally, did George Washington tell a lie? He was not sweet-talking his buddy in 1788 when he told his friend, John Armstrong, that 9 states, 2/3 of the states at the time, could get any amendment they wanted through this amendment process. The only way all of these representations, and there are many, many more, and there are no representations at this time that says the convention was an autonomous body at all, none. Every representation made by the founders at the time of the founding is that the convention is your instrumentality. If you want it to range wild, you can let it range wild. If you don't want it to, you can make it do what you want. And that's what a compact does. And not only that, as an ancillary benefit, I got peer reviewed by Andy Schlafly, Phyllis Schlafly's son, for about 2.5 months. We have the email trail to show you. He poked holes at it until we built 17 safeguards to satisfy him, and he decided at that point he didn't like balanced budget amendments and took his marbles and went home. There we have it, folks, the compact approach. And finally, last point, only the compact can deal with the ugly secret of the Article 5 movement. You know, the ugly secret is Congress physically is an impediment at 2 stages. Whether we like it or not, whether it does what it's supposed to do or not, it is a physical impediment. We don't just get amendments because we want them as states. So you have to have a strategy to deal with Congress. We have a strategy with the compact. We're going to be running a resolution with Congressman Paul Gosar's leadership next session to secure congressional approval of this compact when we only have a couple states in it. Why? Because we don't think the best time to approach Congress is when we actually threaten them. We think the best time to approach Congress is when we're just like voting for somebody's birthday resolution. And that is the flexibility that the compact approach gives you. And there's many more things we can address in the Q&A. I'll leave you with this.